Hi, Charlotte. So thanks for coming here today to have a little bit of a chat about your career as a litigator and just fill us in, on the details. Wanted to just start, if you could give us a potted history of your legal career to date, really, and where you are now and how you got there.
Yeah, sure. So it's a pretty short story actually, because I went to university. I sort of qualified via what we now call the traditional route. So I went to University of Liverpool. I studied law, LLB, graduated, went off to Birmingham College of Law, which is now University of Law, to do an LPC. Secured a training contract with what was FBC Solicitors back in 2006. In my LPC year, started with them the day after I finished the LPC course, so 19th of June 06, and have been nowhere else since.
So, well,
Fell on my feet, really loved it, loved the place, the people, the location was perfect for me, the clients that we were dealing with. I am a really passionate sort of lawyer, in the sense that I love what I do, and I have done since I first started. So I had no reason to leave. I got a job on qualification and then just worked my way up. I think I became a salaried partner about the age of 33, joined equity 35, 36.
okay.
And saw the advantage of being in a firm that allowed a progression like that, because it's unusual. You don't really find it in bigger city firms that you can make those steps so quickly. But I saw that it was happening here and knew it was what I wanted. So just got my head down and worked my way up.
Fantastic. And was litigation something that was always what you wanted to do? That was always apparent you wanted to go that way, or did you ever toy with any other areas?
So academically, I'm not sure that I formed any sort of view, but certainly when I came into the profession, I'd got a very open mind. I worked out really quickly that I was never going to be a very good family lawyer. So that was a conclusion that I was able to reach. But I did a commercial property seat, really enjoyed property, and had done when I'd studied it for the LPC. I did a bit of a corporate seat, but by that point I was already headed back to litigation. And so I guess if there was a decision to make, it was between property and lit. But it wasn't really for me. I sort of, you get very nervous, don't you, when you make big life choices, and it feels like a big one as you're about to qualify, because everybody tells you that it's not a decision that you can change very easily. So I would have ummed and ahed over it, but just because it was a big decision or felt like one. But it wasn't really a decision I needed to make. The team, the work type, the location of the role was all really well suited to me. So yeah, haven't looked back since.
Excellent. So what would you say then makes a good litigator? What do you see as being, the key criteria that make a good litigator?
I've always been of the view, actually, that one of the real keys to training lawyers is training them on the soft skills side. And actually, in most cases, if you can help them to become well-rounded, actually, the area of law is pretty unimportant, because we're dealing with people. So you have to have people skills. You have to have, we all have to have some confidence in dispute resolution, in the sense of having to deal with clients in distress, which is what most of us do. They're either in distress because they're involved in a court process, or they're in distress because they've lost somebody close to them. So you have to have that ability to confidently interact with people from all different backgrounds, all walks of life, and in the most difficult times of their lives. So I think that's a really important skill for any solicitor to have, as is communication, being able to clearly explain complicated legal principles, but also make sure that everything you're doing with clients, colleagues, other professionals is clear and concise, is definitely a very crucial part to the job. In terms of litigation itself, then, I guess I've always fashioned myself as a bit of a project manager, because effectively what I'm trying to do is to get a case from point A to point be, i.e. a conclusion of some sort. I'll very often be working not alone on that. We teamwork files internally, but also I'll be working with third parties, and I'm also working with my client who has to make that journey with me. So I guess when I say the term project manager, all of the skills that you'd think one would need and come to mind are relevant to me: organisation, the ability to prioritise, the ability to interact with other people and sort of teamwork are all vital to that.
Definitely, and it is very project based, isn't it? Because it is a whole new thing. Every new matter is a whole new set of circumstances that need to get to a different point. So yeah, the point A to point B makes sense.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. And are there any sort of personality sort of types that you think have you seen any personality types clash with being a litigator, where people have gone in and it's just not worked for them for whatever reason?
I think so. I'm more on the commercial litigation side, but I do have a decent private individual client base. I think a lot of the trainees that I've seen come through the department would say that if they've not chosen to stay here, it's because they want more of the individual client work. So I guess the first thing for anybody watching this in the position of thinking about what they want to do that might be something to consider is what commercial litigation means. It does primarily mean that you're dealing with businesses and money. So lots of trainees will come through and say, actually, I want to deal with real personal life stuff, family, private client, etc. I guess that some will be under the misapprehension that if you're of a more introverted character, then litigation might not be the pathway for you, because there is a stereotype of most litigation lawyers. I don't necessarily think that that's a truism of the lawyers that I see who are really good at what we do. So I think it's something that most introverts might, or those who consider themselves to be more introverted, might think isn't going to be a good fit, but I give it a chance notwithstanding that. I guess the really difficult quality that lots of lawyers have and that causes pressure in litigation is perfectionism, because actually it's a standard that we rarely achieve, although strive our best to do so. And when you're under pressure and you're having to work to really tight deadlines, perfectionism can be a really difficult preference to navigate, because if you've got half a day to bring injunctive proceedings, it's unlikely that they're going to be perfect when you look back at them in 3 months' time, in the way that they might have been had you had 3 months to prepare that case. So perfectionism is a really difficult quality, I think, that lawyers bring to the job. It causes a lot of expectations that are unnecessary, and I think that gap between wanting perfectionism and being able to achieve it in practice is where a lot of the pressure of this job lies.
Yeah, I think you're right, definitely. And it is about, at the end of the day, it's getting the job done, isn't it? Whatever field you're in, the client, whether it's the short deadlines because of the courts or whether it's clients just wanting to move on with things, I think, you have to balance it with actually just getting the work done and keeping everyone happy, rather than perfectionism, which is sort of what your exams and things are, what you're striving for in academia. So it's a different thing.
And you'll have seen in all of the legal press, there's a huge culture around mistake making as lawyers, and it hasn't always been particularly supportive. And I think what that generates is a feeling that actually, to avoid mistakes, everything has to be perfect, which is a shame, because none of us will ever achieve that. But it is a product of messages that are put out within our profession, predominantly as a result of regulation, that compounds that feeling of wanting to be perfect by providing serious consequences, giving examples where things weren't perfect. So it's a bit of a difficult issue to navigate. But I think again, anyone watching this that might be considering any career in the profession really needs to get good at making mistakes and seeing them as opportunities to learn, as opposed to any sort of reflection on intellect or ability, or generally how good you are at your job.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's about finding the right culture to do that in, isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
having people around you that appreciate that mistakes will happen and that they are learning opportunities. So
absolutely.
yeah,
And we'll support you in putting them right. I mean, on the occasions where I've made mistakes, I've usually recognised it at sort of 3 a.m. And, and have been desperate to get into the office and speak to somebody about putting it right, because I knew that would be the outcome. So yeah, you're right, culture is really important. That's so hard to really get to the bottom of when you're not sat within a law firm living and breathing it. But I guess with social media and having that access to people within those firms now, trainees and apprentices and paralegals, etc., can make some sort of attempt to speak to real life humans who are in that environment to make sure it's the one that they want to launch themselves into.
definitely, definitely. No, that's true. And so do you how do you with your, I mean, I do hear this from litigators, obviously the field in which you live is contentious, so it by nature everyone's sort of arguing day in day out. How do you maintain positivity in that sort of environment for the long term, for the course of a career sort of thing?
Yeah, so I guess let's dispel the myth, because there was a point at which litigators were in court a lot, and that just isn't the case any longer, because actually our job is to make sure that cases don't go to court if we're able to. The courts say that litigation has to be a last resort, but actually we're acting in the best interests of our client if we can keep it away from a trial. So yes, in the sense of there being a dispute and in the sense of me occupying one side of it and the opponent occupying the other, it's contentious, and clients very often will want to see that you are actively taking their side in that. But the reality is that we're all working to the same goal, which is to avoid a court hearing if that's possible, by narrowing the issues as far as we can in correspondence and other sort of ancillary processes, in order to bring about a solution as quickly and as cost effectively as we can. So there are parts of the job that involve me sitting down and putting the equivalent of submissions to the other party, really sort of advocating for my client's position. But a lot of it is trying to get cooperation with the other opponent lawyer so that we are on the same page and can do the best by our respective clients that way. I guess the real trick is not to jump into the issue with the client. You know, ultimately I'm their agent. It doesn't serve them if I start adopting the dispute as my own. They don't want a lawyer who is so annoyed at what the other party is doing that they can't think clearly and they're reacting irrationally. You know, they want me to be able to maintain that step back in order to see the bigger picture and to empathise with how they're feeling in response to what an opponent may or may not have done, but actually not leave them sat there in it, because that's not that's not helpful to them. And the longer we spend sat in it, in the unfairness, in the injustice, it's more expensive and more distressing it is for the client. So I try to really sort of maintain boundaries between me and the emotional side of the dispute. I can absolutely empathise with it, and it will be one of the most stressful experiences that the clients I act for go through in their lives, but it doesn't serve them if I'm living it alongside them, so I don't.
I suppose that's the thing, is yeah, you want to come in as the voice of reason, and they want you to be the calm, I suppose, on their chaotic, as they see it, situation where they're aerated and stressed sort of thing. They don't need you to replicate that. So
no, I guess you're always sort of a shoulder. You know, the first part of any conversation I have with a client when I've had a difficult communication in from an opponent is to let them vent. And that's part and parcel of the job that I do. You know, they often won't have anybody else that they can talk to who really understands what they're going through. So that's fine and absolutely something that I'm there for. But in terms of becoming contentious with them, there's just no
Yeah.
point. And actually, most litigation lawyers will tell you that the disputes that end up in front of the court are where one or other of the lawyers is operating in that way, because they become unworkable for the other side. And that's not in their client's best interests, in my opinion. So yeah, I just don't do it.
Yeah, no, fair enough, fair enough. And so over the course of your career, then obviously, like you say, your career was sort of one place that you've developed in, but you've obviously gone up through the ranks and everything over the years. What would you see as sort of the key development in that time? Or key developments, what things have changed sort of from when you started to how you operate day to day now over the course of your career?
So I guess legally speaking, there've been quite a few, but actually the biggest that I always land on when I'm asked this question is that we've become a business. So we used to be a law firm first, and what we are now is a business who operates legal services. And there's a real advantage to that, because what it means is that all of the sort of business features that you'd expect of corporations are no longer sort of lost in the ether. So when we're talking about the importance of our people, you know, we have policies and procedures around them that they could walk into any other company and expect, which was not always the case. Law firms used to operate in, you know, from what I've seen, in a bit of a vacuum, where the lawyers had been promoted into managerial and team leader positions with no training, no particular desire to do it. And actually, a lot of the legal skills that are taught to us are contrary to all of the sort of business ownership and management side of things. So moving from law firm with lawyers who have to do business to a business who operates legal services has meant we now have a whole team of non-lawyers who manage the business operations side for us. We've got a non-lawyer MD, and that leaves those of us who decided to pursue a career in law qualify into a legal department and build our careers as lawyers to do the law. Yes, I still have responsibilities for my team. Yes, I still have accountability to the business operations, in the sense of, you know, I've got targets to meet, I've got targets to achieve on behalf of the team, I've got to manage clients coming in, service levels, how my team feels about the work they're doing, you know, the role that they occupy, etc. But actually the majority of it I don't have to think about any longer, because the business takes care of it. And I think that has been such a step forward for us. And I think as you look around the profession, you see that most others are sort of have taken that step with us, and it's for the better. So yeah, the biggest and most significant development that I've seen and felt is that we've become businesses who operate legal services.
No, and I can see how much better that is for you as a fee earner as well, because like you say, you can focus on what you're good at, what you're trained to do, and what you're there to do, rather than getting drawn into, you know, operation stuff, which is, you know, not what you're trained or skilled in, sort of thing. So it's support, isn't it? Having the right support in the right place, but that doesn't mean having a secretary underneath you. It means having all the management above you and around you as well to support you in what you're doing.
Yeah, so we're a really safe practice. We've got a compliance team that we could bolt in another firm probably the same size of us too, and we'd still be working within capacity. We've got technology that means that, you know, we operate in a really highly functioning way. Everything's connected and talks to each other. Everything's a couple of clicks away. That makes my life so much easier. And if we were focusing purely on the law, as opposed to having a head of IT, a head of you know, whatever it might be, head of compliance, who's saying, actually, we need to take these steps over. I've seen it operating elsewhere. I've seen how it works and the advantages. We just wouldn't have done that. So I think when you sort of land somebody in a setup like the one we've got, I've seen them take big sighs of relief, because actually they don't have we make the job easy, because we've had those business functions who've said, this is how we make everything more seamless. So that's been the biggest change for us. And I think if somebody came in and sort of stepped in from another law firm and said, what are you doing that's different, that would be one of the things that they noticed. we really have sort of kitted ourselves up from a business perspective.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So it does mean everyone can focus on what they're doing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so looking forward then, sort of same question, but looking forward, what do you foresee as the big things which might hit in sort of short, medium, long term in the field of litigation that you feel will impact yourself and your team?
Yeah, I guess I'm sorry to be really predictable, but I've got to say AI, because it's just such an unknown, isn't it? And
Yeah.
we all keep talking about it, and things come out, and we have another look at it. But I guess somebody sat in my shoes, I'm not sort of particularly well versed on that side of things. I've got IT clients who talk to me about what it means and what its potential is, and I keep abreast of sort of general discussion within the realm of the internet, but I'm not on the fore of it. So I guess there's still a big question mark over that for us. We've certainly started to play with it, and we can see that there are advantages to it, and it can make things easier in a very sort of light touch and narrow way that we've been and then looked at it. But I think at the point at which we start to become comfortable as a profession with it, it will just blow the whole thing open. I don't think it means the end of human lawyers, because we're a people
No.
business. So I'm not going to buy into any of the scaremongering. But I think when you look at how we rely upon electronic resources, when we already rely really heavily upon the internet to keep us on top of our practice areas, when you look at what our IT systems can already do in terms of producing really good standards of first drafts of documents, they still all require a human to look over them and be happy with them. I think that's where you'll see the added benefit. And of course, I think then when you're looking at some of the professions that we work alongside, experts, surveyors, engineers, accountants, having them equipped with certain AI functionality will also mean that their roles are more consistently reliable. So I don't see it as a risk. I see it definitely as an opportunity, but I do think it'll be a big shift for us, albeit probably a slow one that we're drip fed. But I guess that's the one that everybody can see on the horizon.
Definitely. And I think it's so you only need to look backwards to see how far things have come. It wasn't that long ago that people were operating, with phones and the postal system and still doing the job of a lawyer. So it's sort of about new tools, isn't it? Rather than, throwing away the lawyers and just bringing in the computers. It's just new tools to do the same work in a more effective way, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first joined, I used to get sort of 2 or 3 emails a day. Everything was done by letter and everything was done by fax. And I mean, I don't think we have a fax number anymore. I haven't sent a fax for probably like 10 years.
I think if a fax came through the machine, everyone would wonder what the noise was.
Exactly, what is that? Most people would say. But yeah, I remember sort of having a perfectly neat and well organized inbox, because nobody emailed me apart from internally. External, everything was still done by post. And then look at where we are now on that. I mean, I don't send anything by post anymore, really. Bundles are couriered and everything else is, unless it's unusual now to have a firm on the other side that says they won't accept anything by email. But occasionally I still get that, so I'm doing sort of post or whatever. But yeah, everything's done electronically now, isn't it? So, and that's in 18 years.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? So 18 years from now, who knows where we'll be? But
yeah, exactly.
It's big changes do happen, but as you say, they happen slowly. So
you don't know
as they implement, you just take on board the next step, don't you? So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, no, that's great. Thanks for joining us to sort of share a little bit of a window into litigation and, how it's been for you and how you feel. I think it's really useful to people who are looking, which direction should I go into? Just any insight, really, real life insights about working in an area of law is so useful. So thanks for sharing.
No, pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Take care.
And you.